choice making on the part of the director, the ensemble, and so on and so forth, dramaturgs, about what will be shaped, how it will be, what thematically wants to be highlighted, what the running time wants to be, so on and so forth. And but it may not be quite as perceptible because we come to the event, we hear the Shakespearean language roll out, and we assume, well, that's the complete play. But of course, it has gone through some shaping process. And I guess where I start with Shakespeare, which is always my favorite as a director, it's really the top of my list of the favorite things, pieces of writing I like to work on, because of the richness, of course, the enduring nature of why it's still relevant, even now, hundreds and hundreds of years later. Just the magic of that writer and that work. I feel such reverence for, even as I approach it from an adapter/director point of view, which really comes from the fact that I believe very strongly that Shakespeare was a populist writer, and that he wrote theatrical pieces not as museum pieces, as it were, not as archival pieces of his time, but as active, living, breathing, interactive pieces to be presented for an audience of that time, of that place, and references, colloquialisms, slang of that time and place, so that anyone who was coming in Shakespeare's time to see the productions, whether the groundlings or the royalty or anywhere in between, it was a piece that was accessible, and it was a piece that everyone understood what the references were. People were able to access the humor, of which even in all of the tragedies, plays are rife with humor and humorous references, and that's a big part of the texture and the tapestry of the work. And so I guess my compass coming into looking at a Shakespearean piece, the wellspring I draw from is that, my sort of affinity for that intent of Shakespeare's. And maybe that comes from my commedia background, which also is very much about presenting theatrical works that speak to people in a particular time, in a particular place, with references that everyone can understand. And therefore, we're all sort of sharing a communal experience, a communal live experience. And so, with that, Merry Wives is a piece that, of course, is a comedy, and right out of the chute, you've got a scene, the first scene of the play, that's quite, off the page, you open it up, it's quite dense with references that are obscure at this point in time, of course, hundreds of years later. I don't know if he knew that we were still going to be producing his work at this juncture in time. But I venture that if he did, that he would want people to have the same immediate response to the situation, to the characters, to the humor of the moment that the people of his time did, the audiences of his time. So this scene is, quite dense off the page with references that I think are somewhat obscure. And so, yes, you can sort of keep it as it is, or I've tried to kind of keep the spirit of what I think it is. Find a way to bring the humor out and illuminate the situation with slight adaptations of language that will, I hope, make the event more accessible. That's really my only intent. It's not to be fancy. It's not.
I'm firmly on board with Tracy about populist theater. I don't know if you know about the Variorums. There was an editor, Victorian editor, Furness, who did 22 of the plays, compiled Variorums, late Victorian, early Edwardian. You can find them at BSU Library. So often when I'm stuck about a line in Shakespeare, which happens way more often than you might think for all of us, we have thesauruses, we have the lexicons, we have the glossaries in the various editions. We look at various editions from various editors. Then I go to a university, and invariably somebody's donated these Variorum. And so I go and I look, and it's word by word. Various editors from the 18th century, from the 17th century, from Germany, from France. What might this mean? And I think this should go there. And I think, that folio 3 is wrong. And I think that the quarto 2 is the actual definitive for this. I'll give you an example. I played for Charlie Belch, Sir Toby Belch, the second time I've done it, in Tahoe. And there's music there that we know that Peter Still, our music designer, is a genius. He can find the actual popular song. So when you hear a song in Shakespeare, they were hearing like what was on the hit parade now. Anytime you hear a song in a Shakespeare play, the Elizabethan audience were hearing the top 10 of now. So put in Beyonce. As you're sitting watching, do it. That's what's happening for you. That's what Tracy's talking about. So they knew those songs. So I was like, Charlie, what is this moment? There's 2 lines of this lyric, and he stops. I looked through the Variorum, and there's one editor from, a parson in like some county in England in 1787 says, well, in this song, the next line is, and it was about him getting married. And I went, Charlie, I want this line because it's now about Mariah. And the audience would have known any song that you know, that we could all know together. We would know the first 2 lines, and then if we left the 3rd line out, you would know what the reference would be. Yes, you're following the argument? Yes. The Elizabethan audience would have known what the next line would have been. We don't know that. So I am now a fan of, we cut, what is it, Charlie, a 1/3 of these plays? Whatever you think you're seeing, we've cut a 1/3 of them. And some of that is just stuff that is gibberish to us. Good luck if you can make sense of it. Maybe reading in the Shakespeare Society confines, it'll make clear sense. To us in a rehearsal room, get it out. Because we don't want to lose you, we want to get you. So, Charlie Rose with Tom Stoppard on. And he's talking about his art as a playwright and his own limitations as he perceives them and his own strengths. And there he is, Tom Stoppard, this uber successful, wonderful addition to our playwriting canon. And he's saying, I wish I was a better storyteller. Really, that was his major concern with himself. But he was talking about how to pitch plays. This is a man I assume he reads to me as highly intellectual, extraordinarily bright, seems to me. And he talks about, as an artist, true artist of the theater, he's saying, my responsibility is to write for all 3 strata of my audience, just like Shakespeare. I am attempting, through myself, my instrument, to write for the intelligentsia, for the middle brow, and for the groundlings. And I can't do it all the time in each scene. So obviously my art is to have them refract on each other, to let broad comedy release a smile from the intelligentsia, to let extraordinarily clever stuff release laughter from the highbrows, that the groundlings go, oh, that's funny. Okay, good. Now what? So they're brought forward. You're not homogenous. Look around the room. I mean, you might think you as a group are homogenous. You know you're not. You know you're not. And an audience out here has extraordinary strata in it. We're trying to actually have a communal event. Whether we do a Shakespeare tragedy, it doesn't matter. So you absolutely need popular stuff as access. In addition to which, we may be talking down to you, but we're not talking down to us, so we got to put it at our level.
Can I just add one thing to that?
Absolutely.
Just about Merry Wives, because of course Merry Wives does kind of take it in the shorts, as it were, to be lowbrow about it, about being sort of a lesser of Shakespeare's plays. However, I feel one of the great thrills of working with Aled, and my inspiration that I was talking a little bit about in knowing that he was going to be Falstaff, has to do with being able to mine, even in Merry Wives, which is a comedic romp in many, many ways. However, because it's Shakespeare, there are speeches contained therein, there are moments contained therein of great, great depth, humanity, soul, revelation, articulation of the human dilemma, and as you would find in any of the great works. And there's a kind of an honor speech in this that I find very moving. And Aled has several of these sort of, it's Falstaff, the commentary that's both clever and with great depth, I find. And so I 100% concur with the notion of, I get excited when theater's firing on all those levels, because that to me is the truest experience of life. There's the depth and the sort of breadth, and then there's the dumb stuff that happens every day that is really funny, and the dumb YouTube clip that we all watch because it's viral. And then there's the beautiful piece of art that we go see and we sort of revere, or the spiritual moment in whatever context. And Shakespeare brings all of that together, and that's, to me, the enduring nature of it. That really is the heart of the enduring nature of it. So.
That was gorgeous.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.